Guess what? We're back. It's Rothenberg Untucked. And there's a lot to do today because today we have that kind of morphing from baseball into football. The Mets, could you be more of a disaster than the Mets are right now? Or red hot than the Yankees are at the moment? They run right past the Red Sox. So baseball will be a major discussion on Rothenberg Untucked. The Jets, injuries, couple of them, but still looking pretty good this preseason. A lot of excitement around Rob Saleh, Zach Wilson, and the Jets. And the Giants, the rubber meets the road. I don't exactly know what that means, but I'm sure this year the rubber meets the road for Gettleman and the quarterback and this team. And then, of course, the NFC East. And you say, I want a story time? We've got that as well. Lot to do. Very busy summer edition of Rothenberg Untucked right now. I love talking sports for a living. I do. I almost can't get enough. Like I'll be at a wedding or a engagement party, so to speak, and it's just the people come up, Dave, let's talk sports. And really, I don't have a lot of depth besides that. I know a little bit about movies, but I know a lot about sports. And there are some times in this industry where the sports conversation is just awful. It's just difficult, and it's nearly impossible. And that, my friends, is our jumping off point today with the New York Mets. The Mets have a 13-game run, finish with the Dodgers and the Giants. And you think to yourself, 13 games, two best teams in baseball maybe. All right, what would you sign for? 13, 6-7? No, the Mets scoff at that. 5-8? No. 4-9? No. 3-10? No, they can't go 3-10. 2-11? Yeah. They went 2-11. They got swept at home by the Giants. This is a team that had a comfortable 5-game lead well into the second half of the season. They're now 7 games out of a team that's not even great in Atlanta. What has happened here? We were promised. We were with the Wilpons. They're gone. You don't have to deal with the Wilpons anymore. Guess what you get now? You get a guy that doesn't. He has artwork worth more than the Mets. He has artwork worth more than any player on this team. He doesn't know what to do with all this money. So the Mets are going to be good, and they're going to be good forever. The Mets are going to be. This is what you heard right before the season. The Mets are going to be the new Dodgers, where they have so much money. Even if, say, a Trevor Bauer can't continue to pitch because he gets himself into trouble, don't worry, there's reserves there, and we'll bring in a Trey Turner and a Max Scherzer. So the Mets, right? Issues. Lindor, an issue. DeGrom, an issue. What do? How do they put a Band-Aid on what ails them? Let's bring in, to top it off beautifully, let's bring in Rich Hill. That's going to be Rich Hill and Javi Baez. Now, mind you, Javi Baez might he's a talented player, and nobody denies that. But when you got to the trade deadline, and the news was out there that there was a major issue when it came to DeGrom, the big addition that you think, well, we've got to figure it out, is Rich Hill. That's the big change that you make, is Rich Hill. If Tampa at the deadline deems, we can move on from a guy like Rich Hill, why would the Mets be in the market for an aging, mediocre lefty who probably had about as good a first half of the season as possible and has been, as you figured, pedestrian since the Mets acquired him? And then Javi Baez, Baez is hurt. And Baez, he's going to hit big home runs. He's going to strike out a lot. There are at-bats that you watch him and you turn to the person next to you, you're like, I can't believe this guy is so bad. So the Mets, somehow, in a division which stinks, where the best player in the division, position player, everyday player, Ronald Acuna, is out for the season, the Braves at the deadline go all in and bring in reserves and players to make them better. The Mets bring in Rich Hill, Javi Baez, and here we are. They are now falling apart as far as the National League East is concerned. 2-11, and I have Pete Alonso. This is a big stretch for us. Well, when can we get angry at Pete Alonso? There's that phrase again, this is where the rubber meets the road. Well, the rubber is going right off the road. They went 2-11 over this stretch. It is a disaster. I'm angry at the manager. Did you hear this now? That Syndergaard, who looks like may come back this season, cannot throw sliders, not allowed to. And then the manager mentioned the other night, post-game interview, it was brought to his attention, Luis Rojas, they say that Syndergaard's not going to be able to throw sliders because they think maybe that's what gave him the setback back in May. And his response was, Rojas, he had no idea. Oh, really? Oh, I had no idea. So, I mean, you feel like we all thought it was the Wilpons, right? We all thought the magical problem was the Wilpons. And once the Wilpons are gone, Cohen takes over, and now you have a Jared Porter, a real GM, and then that falls apart. Now Zach Scott, you got Rojas, you got Alderson, and you know what? All I can say is it's the same old Mets. It is. You had a feeling. It changed. It was different. It was better. It was new. It was relevant. I hate to say it. It pains me. Like I told you, I love sports. Sometimes it's painful. This is one of those painful times. It's hard to say, but let's say it together. It's the same old Mets. So as awful and embarrassing as the Mets have been, the Yankees are just the opposite. They couldn't be hotter. All they do now is win games. And you know what's amazing to me? And it gets me angry. It actually gets me angry, is all I heard from the Yankees fan for weeks and weeks. Cashman, get rid of him. He's a bum. He's not capable. He can't. Look, they're so right-handed. Look how they don't have anybody who's a lefty. Aaron Boone doesn't connect with the players, doesn't know how to work the bullpen. Disaster. Fire him. Let's be honest. You're a baby, right? If you're a Yankees fan, I'm looking at you. You are a baby in the way you've dealt with the Yankees this year. Because do not tell me that you did not want Boone and or Cashman gone. And I'm looking at you, right at you, dead in the eye. You cannot look internally at this very moment and tell me, honestly, we have a great relationship, you and I. You cannot tell me that you did not want Cashman and or Boone gone. Right? July, when it was so awful. Right? Think June, when things were just spiraling out of control. You wanted those guys out of here. And now they add Rizzo, they add Gallo. All of a sudden, I mean, you didn't know who Heel was. I didn't know who Heel was. Nestor Cortez comes in and is pitching like an all-star pitcher. All of a sudden, Tyone, remember what the first few months with Jameson Tyone happened to be? Oh, he's awful. What a terrible trade. Why did we bring this guy in? Now look at him. Now look at the Yankees. Now look where we sit. We sit with the fact that the Yankees cannot lose. You have a guy, no one's heard of Heel. Terrific. No one's heard of Velasquez. No one heard of Andrew Velasquez. Look at him right now. These are blessings. The fact that Torres went down is a blessing. But when you look at the Yankees right now, as the fact that they almost can't lose a game, and they are so scalding hot, odds are against them to win this division. So what does that mean? That means that the Yankees are going to be in position. And as great as they've been, and they're beating everybody that gets in their way, and I don't think they've had a longer winning streak since 1961, and we know what happened back in 61. But you know what it's going to come down to? Odds are they're not going to win the division. They won't catch Tampa. Because think about this. To be able to catch Tampa, you're going to have to go into, they only play them 3 more times, final weekend of the season. You're going to actually have to be tied with them heading into that weekend series. You say, well, why? Because if you're a game back, you have to sweep them. You say, explain this to me. I'm going to explain it to you. If you're a game back heading into the final weekend series and you win 2 of 3, you're now what? You're now tied. But Tampa has the tiebreaker because they beat you in the season series. There isn't a 1-game playoff that goes on into the extra day. So you have to be tied with them and win 2 out of 3. And odds are, as great as you've been, and you don't lose, you've picked up, what, a game on Tampa? So odds are you're not going to catch Tampa. So odds are that this Yankees juggernaut at the moment, and they have been phenomenal. I mean, you see what they've done, and we'll see if Severino can get back, and we'll see if Kluber gets back. And even if they don't, they have been so red hot. But it looks to me, and I think you'd agree, it will be Yankees, probably Red Sox, 1 game at Yankee Stadium. So I ask you now, look deep inside yourself. Do you love that? Do you love 1 game, winner take all, very 1978-esque, of Garrett Cole, Chris Sale? I win, I move on to Tampa, I lose, I go home. Well, you don't like that. And I don't think you should. And in fact, I'm confident you should not. So as great as this has been, and you're the baby, you're the Yankees fan, and you have struggled you have struggled with Boone, with Cashman, get rid of these guys, and they bring in Rizzo and Gallo and completely change this team. But let's be honest. One game, Chris Sale on the mound, that's a roll of the dice, people. And I get called, I'm home, I go up against Sale. Yeah, I like my chances, but what do I like them at? 60-40? So you're telling me, as great as the Yankees have been, you look at this thing and say, I have a 60% chance to get into the actual legitimate postseason. You know what? I don't love that. I don't love that at all. And when you think about it, honestly, I don't think you love it either. So Yankees look great. They might not lose the rest of the season, but odds are, one game, Chris Sale, Yankee Stadium. Welcome back to 1978. Mets conversation, Yankees, Red Sox, Garrett Cole, Chris Sale, all of it great. But back by popular demand, it is now story time with Rothenberg. And I go back years, probably more than a decade, as a matter of fact. And we'll play the way back music, right? Maybe the waves will go across the screen and it'll bring us back to me as a younger man, a newer father. And I don't know if you remember this game. Do you remember the Yankees and the Mets? And I distinctly remember this was a Friday night. So my wife and I are living in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, New York. And we had a new baby by the name of Benjamin. And he was, because we were not of means at the time, and still not, but we were not of means at the time, he actually slept in, and his nursery was in the dining room. We didn't have a dining room there. We had a nursery for our little boy. Okay? Mets, Yankees, Friday night, huge game. Mets are going to win this game. Mets are on the verge. Mets, I believe, are 1 out away. Yankee Stadium, hush for the crowd. Alex Rodriguez comes to the plate. Mets were up. I don't remember the exact score, but if memory serves correctly, Mets were up by a run. Pop up to second base. Luis Castillo gets under it. Now, mind you, it's a Friday evening. My little child, fast asleep in the dining room / nursery. Wife is milling around, doing what she's doing on a Friday night. I am glued to this game. I'm in the TV room, which is right off of the nursery. Pop up, Castillo's under it, and I realize we're going to win this game. So Luis Castillo, under it, looks up, comes down into his glove, pops out of the mitt. Runner on third, scores. Runner from, I think it might have been first, comes all the way around and scores. And the Mets lose this game. I shriek. I mean, like, you would have thought that Ted Bundy was roaming through my home. I start screaming. You got yelling, screaming, shrieking. My wife comes in and she says, "What the hell is wrong with you? You're going to wake the baby." And I turned to her, and I swear to you, as the day is long, I turned to her and I said, "I completely forgot we had a baby." At that moment, I just went into crazy sports fandom. I didn't even recognize, I didn't remember, I had no recollection that we had a child. That's what sports will do. It takes you away. It's an escape from reality, an escape from a baby being 8 feet away from you in the next room. The ball is dropped. I shriek. She comes in. "You're going to wake the baby." "I'm sorry. I forgot we had a baby," is my response. She's lucky I remembered that she and I were married at the time. Oh, Luis Castillo, you and I better never run into each other. And that's a sad version of Story Time with Rothenberg. Right on the heels of Story Time with Rothenberg, now we're going to get into, the NFL. We are so close to the start. You can almost taste the start of the NFL season. And look, the locals in New York, Jets, I don't know how many wins it's going to, mean for the Jets, but I think for the first time in a long time, there's an optimism. We'll get to the Giants and the NFC East in just a couple of moments. But when you really sit back and think about the Jets, let me ask you a series of yes-no questions, okay? Do you feel good about your head coach? You're a Jets fan. Right now, we're sitting here getting ready for the season. Do you feel good about your head coach? comes from a storied program, did wonderfully well running a defense, very well respected. I think the answer is a definitive yes. I feel good, you feel good, we all feel good about Rob Saleh. Let me ask you another question. So far, preseason, what you've seen, do you feel good? And again, it's preseason, I understand it, but I don't know, it kind of feels like there's a groundswell of excitement and support for the quarterback, doesn't there? So I'm going to ask you another question. Do you feel good about this young quarterback? Now, things change. Week 1 runs onto the field against Carolina, goes 11 of 27 for 3 interceptions, and all of a sudden it's a disaster. But at the moment, you feel pretty good about your quarterback. And it could change, and I get that. Do you feel good about the kid Vera Tucker that they drafted out of USC? Yeah, I think that you'll feel good about him, and you like the fact that you have a legitimate left tackle, a legitimate left guard. You signed Moses, right? I mean, not the actual Moses, but Morgan Moses from Washington, and you have now a real right tackle. It feels like the Jets' offensive line, and that's what Joe Douglas promised us. And that's what Dave Gettleman promised as well, and he's paid none of that off. But Douglas has paid off, giving you what looks to be a legitimate offensive line. You have the running back that you draft. The Jets have a lot. And what I like that they've done is that they have looked at the running back situation, much like they did in San Francisco, and said, just give me guys. Just give me capable guys. So you have a lot of them, right? I mean, you look at the Jets' depth at running back, they have about 4 or 5 guys that are pretty good. And you know what the beautiful thing about it is? If one of those pretty good guys gets hurt, let me just put the next pretty good guy out there. So I think you like the running back situation. Elijah Moore, there's got to be excitement about him. So I don't know that it's going to translate into the Jets winning 10 games or even 8 games. But here's what I'll say about the Jets this year. You feel like maybe you're finally in good hands, don't you? Like you have a GM that I think you like. You have a head coach that I think you like. You have some optimism around the quarterback. So the Jets are almost in a very enviable position. And what is that position, you ask? It's a position of, it doesn't need to translate to wins. It doesn't, right? You're a passionate Jets fan. We're ready for the 2021 season. If I told you the Jets go, 5-12. Now, mind you, getting to 17 games is going to be bizarre for a very long time. But if I tell you the Jets go 5-12, but the coach is good, and the quarterback looks like he has real promise, and the offensive line is pretty good, you'd sign for that right now, right? You don't, 7 wins, 8 wins, whatever. Doesn't matter. All you need to do is get to the end of the season and look yourself in the mirror and say, I have my quarterback or I don't. That's what this season is about. I like my head coach or I don't. I like my quarterback or I don't. I like my offensive line or I don't. It doesn't necessarily have to translate into wins and losses this year for the Jets. Next year, it might. You know, it's weird. This is Joe Douglas's 3rd year now. So there are starting to be some expectations, but we're not there yet. Give me 5-12, but define that the quarterback is good, that Moore is a real receiver, that the offensive line is going to be capable. They've gotten hammered injury-wise, and we're not even to the regular season yet on defense. But just show me competence. You got Seattle's number 1. You got your number 1. If you have a quarterback and a head coach, you're well ahead of the curve if you're in the NFL right now. Quarterback, head coach, 2 number 1 draft picks, first-round draft picks next year. I hate to say it because I know the Jets fan doesn't like to hear it. I think this team might be heading in the right direction. All right, so on the heels of the Jets, who have very little pressure, we turn our attention to the other New York, New Jersey tri-state football team, and that's the New York Football Giants. And we've said it over and over and over. There's no pressure on the Jets. The same cannot be said for the Giants. Oh, there's tremendous pressure all over the place. Not on the head coach, mind you. Head coach, scot-free. You like what he's gotten done here early on. You feel like he's already established his culture and all that, and that's great. Quarterback, oh my God, is there a lot of pressure. I mean, Dan, this is year 3. So think about this. You're 2 years in. The question is asked, do the Giants have a quarterback? The answer is, I don't know, right? I mean, you might even like what he's capable of doing, but if I ask you right now, do you like what Daniel Jones is? The answer is, I don't know. I don't know what he's capable of doing. He seems fine, right? He was better in year 1 than he was in year 2, right? Like that Tampa game where they had that miraculous win. Year 2, yeah, he looks to be okay, but I don't think we're certain. So, Judge, put him in the left-hand column. Great, fine, win, you like him. Quarterback? I don't know. GM? I mean, You just have to kind of live life, I would think, with blinders on, to look at Dave Gettleman and to say to yourself, you know what? He's great. Dave Gettleman's vow to me, to you, to the Mara family, to the Giants organization when he took over was what? He said it over and over and over. I'm going to fix the offensive line, right? And it's like John F. Kennedy voice. I'm going to fix the offensive line. He's been here not one, not two, not three. This is his fourth year. What was the phrase? You remember the phrase? Hog mollies. We're gonna have hog mollies up the wazoo. So 4 years. Let me ask you this. What's the biggest question when it comes to the Giants? Like, you're a Giants fan, or even if you're not, what is the number one thing that you need answered to think if the Giants will be good or not really good this year? Take your time. Think about it. What is it? Yeah. It's the offensive line. So we're 4 years in, and this guy was going to come in and fix it and completely change the look of this team with the offensive line. And he signed Nate Solder. He signed Patrick Amame. He drafted Will Hernandez. He could have had any offensive lineman in last year's draft, and he took Andrew Thomas. And I'm not saying it's a bad pick yet, but right now, Andrew Thomas against the other guys that were taken in the draft last year is probably 5 of 5. He was the first one taken and the 5th best of those guys. So Gettleman has a ton of pressure this year. Jones, a ton of pressure this year. And let me ask you a question. I mean, look at what they have. You have Barkley, who you have to think is going to be somewhat healthy. You love him. Great. You have Evan Ingram as a number 1 option. Not great. As a number 3 or 4 option. Great. Kenny Golladay, be nice if he got on the field, but you're excited to see what he's capable of doing when he comes in, right? Kadarius Toney. I repeat the same thing. Be nice if he got on the field, but you feel good about what he's going to be able to do when he gets on the field. Sterling Shepard looks great. Darius Slayton, Kyle Rudolph. Caden Smith. You have a lot of talent offensively if you are the Giants. But what happens if the offensive line's not good? What happens if at the end of the day, the offensive line stinks? Is that on me? Is that on you? No, it's on one guy who will be looking for work, or maybe he'll just sail into the sunset in Dave Gettleman. But the Giants' offensive line, it has to be better this year. Because if it's not, I got the Bears' number 1 pick. I got my number 1 pick. I have a new GM, and I don't know what I'm doing at quarterback. Jets have little to any pressure this year. Giants have a ton of pressure this year. And almost all of it boils down to the offensive line. So speaking of the Giants and the NFC East, let's turn our attention to a division which was, let's be fair, putrid last year. It'll be better this year, but let's kind of go through it and maybe even dip our toe into a prediction. A preseason NFC East prediction here on Rothenberg Untucked. So what do we have? Do we have the dregs of this division? You hate to say it, but it looks like the Philadelphia Eagles are not going to be a very good football team, right? If I asked you, let's eliminate one of the 4 teams, can we eliminate the Eagles? I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, I don't know what the quarterback is. I don't think they have a ton. Listen, you like the new receiver from Alabama. You like Miles Sanders. Zach Ertz, how long is he going to be there for? But I don't look at Philadelphia as a legitimate threat to win the NFC. So I'm going to take them, move them to the side, and look at the other 3 teams. Okay. So we have Washington, we have Dallas, and we have the Giants. All right, we've dissected the Giants a little bit. We know that the offensive line is the big key to the New York Football Giants. Let's look at Dallas. Do you trust Dallas's defense? Do you trust McCarthy? Did you look at year 1 of Mike McCarthy and think to yourself, boy, what a great coach this guy is? No, you didn't. Now, offensive line, similarly to the Giants, has to produce, but they were injured. Zach Martin was injured. And Tyron Smith was injured. And if those guys are healthy, that offensive line is better. And Dak Prescott was injured, severe injury. So there's a lot of question marks that go along with Dallas. So a couple of question marks. Health-wise, what's the offensive line look? Health-wise, what's Dak Prescott look like? Defense, I can't be as bad as it was last year, but let's be fair. I think the defense kind of stinks for Dallas. And I don't trust the head coach. So, I know that everyone seems to love what Dallas brings to the table in 2021. I think there are some real question marks surrounding the Cowboys. So, Giants, question marks. Dallas, question marks. And then Eagles, we've already eliminated. And now you turn your attention to Washington. Washington's a good football team. Their defense, clearly in my mind, the best in this division. Offensive line is pretty good. Terry McLaurin, good player. They do have, Antonio Gibson, up-and-coming running back, good player. But then you get to Washington, and you look at you win or lose football games based on, for the most part, what? Your quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick has been in the league longer than you've been alive. And he's never once been to the postseason. And he's had a lot of chances. He had a chance with Miami. Couldn't get him there. Chance with the Jets. Remember that? Week 17. Up to Buffalo we go. All they need to do is beat a lowly Buffalo Bills team. They couldn't win that game. When he was with Buffalo, could he lead them to the postseason? He couldn't do that. He's never led a team to the postseason. So I like what Washington is. I think they have some weapons on offense, and I think their defense is the best that this division has to offer. One of the best defenses in the NFL. But you know what? Quarterback. I think you have some real concerns and some real reservations at the quarterback spot. So I'm going to now make my NFC East prediction. And I know what'll happen. If it blows up in my face, this will be all over the internet, and the people here at Rothenberg Untucked will be throwing it out there to say what an idiot this guy is. I'm taking Philly. I move them to the side. They're not a concern. I'm taking Dallas. I don't trust McCarthy. I don't trust health of the offensive line. I don't trust their defense, and I do have some concerns about the ankle and the shoulder of one Dakota Prescott. So I'm not picking the Cowboys. And then it comes down to the Giants or Washington. You know what? I don't trust Ryan Fitzpatrick. Kick them to the side as well. Your NFC East champions in 2021, 2022 will be the New York Football Giants. And I can hear what you're saying already. You're a homer. You're picking the Giants because you love them, and you're a homer. You know what? The name of the podcast is Rothenberg Untucked. And that's right. I'm taking the Giants to win the NFC East. And there's another full, wonderful edition of Rothenberg Untucked. We laughed, we cried, we had painful moments, the Mets, and exciting moments, the Giants, and even the Jets and the Yankees are just red hot. We covered really everything, and I'd like you to stay along for the ride. So how do you follow the Rothenberg Untucked podcast? On Instagram, TikTok, at Rothenberg Untucked. On Twitter, at Rothenberg, RTHNBRG Untucked. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, it's all the same. Rothenberg Untucked. We have a full football season on the horizon. We'll be back next week with another wonderful edition. More football, more baseball, more story time, maybe Stump Rothenberg as well. Join us again on Rothenberg Untucked.